Fusing styles and genres to do something unique and stay commercial. The anatomy of a track. Let's do it. Welcome to the Music Pro, where we offer practical recording objectives to help you explore the most possibilities to create your best sounds. I'm Chay Wright, and today we're going to talk about the benefits of fusing different styles and genres to broaden your production arsenal and hone your own originality. Genre blending isn't just a trend right now, it might be kind of a revolution. From the streets of Lagos to the underground clubs in Berlin, musicians seem to be breaking traditional boundaries to create something entirely new. And I think of artists like Daniel Caesar, who's undoubtedly R&B, but has these sort of Laurel Canyon overtones in his songwriting and productions. Or a number of the country artists who seem to be pulling on elements of hip-hop to modernize their own sounds. I could go on and on with examples, I guess. By default, I've always had this tendency to mash up genres in my own tracks. And I find that it's always like a useful tool when developing artists and helping them discover their own unique voices and expressions. I especially found it helpful while working with my most recent artist, whose video we saw a clip of at the beginning of this episode. She comes from this really eclectic background musically. This particular track that I'm going to break down today stems from just a simple phone call I got from a music supervisor looking for songs about LA. With the deadline looming at a couple days to deliver, we really weren't sure we were going to make it in time, but it got our juices flowing nonetheless. Now, Virian, the artist, being a native Los Angelino, she knew she wanted to touch on the superficial perception of LA against the cultural vibes and contributions native to Los Angeles, which everyone who lives in this town knows is the essence of what makes it hip. I immediately knew I wanted to do something sonically modern, of course, but laced with sounds from a couple different eras quintessential to Hollywood's footprint in pop culture. I'm going to break the track down in several parts: the essential groove, the guitar, nostalgic coloring, and the strings. Now let's start with the basic groove. Now I knew right off the bat I wanted an 80s synth tone to be sort of the centerpiece in the whole groove. So I essentially started the track with this chord progression using the virtual Roland Juno 106. And then I programmed the main drum groove to go with that. And from there, I instinctively heard guitar. So I pulled from a clavinet motif we have in another record on Virian's album, kind of like this this Prince meets suit and tie vibe. Now, my principal instrument is guitar. Like, whenever I work as a side musician on the road in studio sessions, I'm the guitar guy. So what I like to do is sample myself playing guitar into the MPC, which allows me to stretch the parts even further from what I hear in my head. And you can see how I chopped it up and reperformed it with the pads to get a variant to my initial part idea. And sonically, I wanted the guitar to have a Prince and Sunset sound vibe, so I sampled myself running through an API console into an A800, running 456 formula tape at 15 IPS to get a chunky thing out of the tape tone. And even further than that, I wanted it to sound like I sampled the guitar from a vinyl record. So I put Abbey Road vinyl at the end of my insert chain in the MPC sampler. And I'm even running it through Air's flavor plugin to sound like a transistor radio. From there, I wanted to edge up the groove with another little 80s retro vibe. So I went to one of my favorite instrument plugins, Ollie James's VSDSX Virtual Simmons Electronic Drums Recreation. If you guys aren't hip to Ollie James yet, get hip. All his shit slaps. I use his Virtual Lindrum plugin too. Here's the Simmons. Now you can hear I humanized the Simmons drum program a little bit so that it would feel a bit like I looped a live drummer playing the groove. I love playing with the humanization tool in MPC. You can create like such nuance between tracks to make things, make the machine feel like everything is sampled and looped, even if things are performed in sequence by hand. It's that groove again. The other element I wanted to incorporate fairly intentionally is strings, and I wanted the strings to, personify the glitz and glamour idea of LA life. So I put down a legato part that swells and cuts off on beat 3 of each bar. It gives a bit of tension but releases it to keep some space in the groove. And then I'm also using Granulator and Arturia's Oberheim filter plugin to give it some motion, kind of reminiscent of the Bob Clear Mountain studio trick, which I'll spell out later. It brings a real cinematic vibe to the track, which is kind of the point. It's hard to think about LA without the showbiz aspect, and even with all the TikTokers coming out here over the last few years to live in places like Hype House and all that in order to portray a Hollywood type lifestyle, the modern feel of glitz and glamour still to me implies strings in that old Hollywood essence portrayed in the films of the 40s and 50s.
I get so into you when you get so into me. I do. Fancy parties and cafes, all of living in LA. I do.
Okay, cutting to the breakdown in this track. I really expand on this idea with the lush and lavish feeling strings feature. Takes the track to a dreamy place without doing the typical atmospheric synth pads that a lot of people reach for in modern production. It kind of helps serve the honeypot vibe Virian is given in her lyrics and vocal performance in this part of the song. It feels like, to me, like getting sucked into the dangerous attraction of LA that people get when they come out here and completely lose themselves in. So where the Juno synth and main drum groove serve my modern approach, and the Simmons drums, electric bass, and guitar serve as an R&B funk foundation, the strings work as my like neoclassical songbook sort of contribution to the production, and it all fuses into this sort of alternative pop track. And I have all sorts of other things that nudge the record in different ways. There's a Vocoder track that I ran Virian's lead vocal through. For the choruses to give it a modern LA edge, all while pointing to an era where there was a lot of Vocoder used in productions at this time. I also have, there's a worm.
Tell me you'll never leave me. I want you to tell me that you'll never leave me. Tell me.
This little MiniMoog type worm is sort of my ode to Dr. Dre and the whole G-Funk sound of the 90s out here. And sonically, I'm running the sounds through various console channel strip and tape emulation plugins because I wanted different sounds to feel like they were recorded in different studios around town. And I do this when I bounce the separate track stems to hard disk for mixing. And then I mixed everything using the SSL 360 or the SSL channel strip 2, which is modeled after the 9000K console for modern cohesiveness, as you guys can see.
I just wanna be famous and I just wanna dance. Hollywood's nothing without you. LA is nothing without you.
So there you have it, my little anatomical breakdown of this particular track. Look, the idea of this video was to get us all to look at all the possibilities at originality when you start to fuse different styles and genres together to create a statement, to make one expression, one sort of cohesive expression. And also as producers and engineers to kind of give us all some ideas on how to approach the fusings of different styles and genres sonically. A lot of times when we hear music from different places or different eras, different periods, we hear the sonic things that correlate or connect with it. And there are these sensations that are supposed to kind of get stirred up in us when we hear these sounds. Let's take the strings thing, for instance. On one hand, I wanted the strings to be very cinematic and feel cinematic in a Hollywood sort of sense, in a very Hollywoodish way, if you will. And so I ran the plugin, the Virtual Instrument Strings plugin, which actually is a Contact. It's the Session Strings Pro with Contact. But I ran that through 1073 so that we'd have that warm Neve console lushness. And I didn't have a Capitol Recording Studios chambers or impulse response when I did that, so I used the Todd AO scoring stage, which is in Wave's impulse response plugin, IR1. I used that so that it would have that lush studio playroom vibe with those strings, and you get that cinematic thing. But at the same time, I wanted the strings to feel modern, connect with the modern part of the track as well. And so I was inspired by, what Nile Rodgers and Bernard Edwards did, and Bob Clearmountain did with that Diana Ross record. I highly encourage everyone to check out the Red Bull Academy interview with Nile Rodgers, where he talks about Bob Clearmountain using a Keypex gate on those strings. It's a great story. But that inspired me, and I love what Bob Clearmountain did with those strings through the Keypex for that record, that Diana Ross record, because it elevated the record to a place in such a modern way that we were hearing strings in a space that they had not been previously occupied in. So I wanted to do a similar thing with the strings by running them through what I mentioned earlier. So just different things like that are to get us thinking on how to sonically, take people on a journey with these records that we make, with this music that we create. So look, I'd love to hear you guys ideas and approaches yourselves on different ways you've been fusing different styles and genres together musically and sonically. leave it in the comments as always, and let's have a discussion about all the possibilities to, broadening people's experiences with this music. Guys, the possibilities are endless. It's limitless. What we can do with these things now with the computers, and even if you're a hybrid producer engineer, or you're totally analog, just think of all the tools that we have at our hands in this modern day that we didn't have not too long ago. So again, thanks for checking in, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, Chay Alexander Wright.